Hello guys, this is Thomas Bird, back again here with Pro Tabletop. Today we're going to talk about my new Ultramarine list and how I've slightly tweaked it to include a new unit that's come out, Heavy Intercessors. They're not new necessarily from the book perspective, but they do finally have some models. You can buy those through the Pariah Nexus Kill Team box. So don't quite have their own kit yet, but I did go ahead and pick some of those up. I wasn't really a super fan of them originally. I thought they were kind of too expensive from a points perspective, trying to figure out how to put them in the list without having actual models, converting them. Didn't feel like going through that effort. But since the models came out, picked them up just to take a look at them. I thought they looked pretty cool. And I started kind of taking a second look at them and seeing, could they fill some of the holes that I was seeing in my current list. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what I've done to change my list, how I think it's actually much better, and a recent tournament that we've gone to and the success both myself and the Pro Tabletop team at large had at that event. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you want to know more about the videos that we do here, please check out our YouTube channel. We have some other videos if you want to talk more in depth about my specific Ultramarine lists and why I built some of the pieces that I have. Today, I'm really just focusing on the Heavy Intercessor portion of it, but click into the description. You'll see a full link of my current list, as well as links to some of the other videos about this topic. And yeah, please like, subscribe, all those things. So let's jump in to the actual meat of this presentation, Heavy Intercessors, and why I think they're fantastic.
All right, let's jump into my Ultramarines update. We really want to talk about Heavy Intercessors and why I put them in and why I think they're good. So let's take a quick look at the new list. Again, look in the links in the description if you want to see the full list, and links to my previous videos if you want to see why I chose these units in particular. Again, there's some slight tweaks here. So I took out Tyrannic Veterans. Really excited about those guys. I had some great conversions. I was in the middle of finishing painting them, but I did notice some holes. I was really putting those guys in to help me complete the mission. I had a lot of stuff that could do a lot of killing, but I found I was struggling in some of the board control aspects, or attacking enemy units that are kind of hidden in deep ruin. How can I get to those guys? I wasn't very mobile. The Tyrannic Veterans kind of helped me with that, but they left holes in other places. One of the big places I saw was on the secondaries. If I was going to take Oath of Moment, it really gave my opponent an advantage if they had some way to stymie that. If I didn't go first, or if we play player-placed terrain here, if they knew ahead of time I'm always picking that, they would start stacking the terrain certain ways to make that center more vulnerable to positioning guys there. So if I couldn't just bully out in the center and just be like, I'm here and you can't stop me, then it put Oath of Moment pretty difficult. And then once you start struggling to get Oath of Moment, that's your go-to secondary, you start looking at your other secondaries expecting more out of it. And then now you really start doing things you probably shouldn't be doing. And so I started finding myself struggling. And we have a lot of different opponents we play really competitive games against, quite a lot. So at some point when you start getting beat over and over again, or you start having really tough games, you're like, I have to make sure I make my list to be able to deal with that threat. This threat. So people would start tuning for me. I would start tuning for them. And again, my list is kind of built to take on all comers. So I'm tuning for everybody. And so what I found was, I'd make my list stronger here against Necrons, and then I'd really suffer against Chaos or against Custodes or against XYZ you inserted, right? So there's a good mix here, a lot of great players. And so they don't let you get away with any minor foibles in your list before they'll exploit it. So I wanted to really find something that would help me choose While We Stand. After the fact, While We Stand was my go-to. Oath of Moment came out, and you're like, yay, Oath of Moment. That's the auto go-to. But I found sometimes you cannot pick Oath of Moment. It really is. It puts you in a difficult position, and I don't like forcing my guys to go places when they're not ready. My army is really built around Guilliman, and being a castle, being hard to kill, being a rock, getting super rerolls, being hyper efficient. As soon as I step out of that bubble and start spreading out on the board, you're able to pick me off piecemeal. Things start going south really quickly. So I don't want to go out until I'm ready to go out, right? Until I've defeated your army, until I have the angles, or I have positioning that lets me push out without getting too threatened. So looking at my list here, While We Stand, We Fight, previously my top 2 expensive units was the 10-man Intercessors and Guilliman, and it kind of came down to the attack bikes or the Hellblasters. 165 was my third most expensive unit. Both of those units, they're work units, but they draw aggro like nobody's business. Nobody has time to get shot by those units over an overall game, so they're going to try to kill them if they can. So picking them as a while we stand choice, not great. So I started seeing it. I saw the heavy Intercessors come out in that Pariah kit. I wanted to take a look at them. We put them in there just to test out a little 5-man. I'm like, hey, they kind of pretty durable. They kind of stayed alive. They kind of did things. And I'm like, well, what if I made them a while we stand choice? You know, how many points do I got to put in this unit to make them the most expensive unit? Or at least more than an attack bike squad, right? And you're like, okay, you start playing around with the points, you start pulling 1 or 2 units out. You know, like if I drop 1 tyrannic veteran, I can buy a couple more guys. And then you start thinking, well, if I only have 1 tyrannic veteran, is that really worth it? You want critical mass with 2 because you're really leveraging. I'm spending a CP to put him in reserve. But no, 1, it's not really worth 1 CP to spend just 1 guy. And so the way the math worked out, you see all the power levels next to the guys. You just couldn't, put them and anybody else in reserve. It was like now you're spending 2 CP to put, these different units in, 3 CP. So it's like, oh, that's too much. So I ended up dropping all the training veterans, sad, but that let me put all those points into the heavy Intercessors. So I got a full 10-man with the 2 heavy weapon options. So that really gave them the choice of combat squatting and being extra durable. Learn from Brad, right? He takes those platforms. Once they break up, you have to kill them all to get the 5 points, right? So same thing here. If I combat squad, either the Intercessors or the heavy Intercessors or both, now you got to kill all those choices to get all those 5 points, right? So that's pretty big. So this is the overall list. Really only the tweaks was in the troop squads. You're still looking at it. You kind of have less kind of on the killing side. So you got to be very careful how you use those guys early game. But again, with all the rerolls, if you play your cards right, you are deadly with the shooting. And with your 5-up Feel No Pain, or 5-up Invulnerable Save, 6-up Feel No Pain bubble, transhuman, all those things, you really are more durable than most people would take credit for. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about the heavy Intercessors and their profile and what those guys bring to the table. Heavy Intercessors, their base move is 5. They're wearing that Gravis armor, so that gives them extra toughness and extra wounds. So tough 5, 3 wounds each. They come with 3 different variants of rifles, just like regular Intercessors. Basically, if you don't know anything about heavy Intercessors, the thing you need to know is if you add 1 strength and 6 inches to the range of the gun, that's the difference between a regular Intercessor gun and a heavy Intercessor gun, right? So you have the 3 different options: the assault, the rapid fire, and the heavy. And you just add 1 strength and 6 inches range. Everything else stays the same. So that's the basic profile. Then as a heavy Intercessor, you don't have an option to give the sergeant any melee weapons, but you do have the option to give every 5 guys can take 1 heavy weapon. So basically, you're buying a heavy bolter of some type, and those different heavy bolter versions change based on which profile you buy. They're all the same points at the end of the day. You just got to pick which one. So trying to figure out, okay, I want to take these guys, I'm going to try these guys. What gun do I give them? And so that's important in the context of your army. What are you doing with these guys? But I could tell you here's how I use them in my Ultramarine army. I use them. And one more thing, I guess. Let's talk about the rifle before we jump into that. So the Executor heavy bolt rifle and the Executor bolt rifle. So the basic weapon, again, this is kind of based on the Stalker pattern rifle. Heavy 1, 42 inches, strength 5, AP -2, flat 2 damage. And then you take the heavy bolter, Executor heavy bolter, that's heavy 2, and it's flat 3 damage. Which is good. It's interesting because you don't really have a lot of options for flat 3 damage weapons. So if you're shooting at other units that have 3 wounds, that's really nice. Shoot at some Inceptors, you're shooting at Custodes, you're shooting at other heavy Intercessors. If these starts popping up everywhere, great options. And again, not a ton of shots, but at the same time, great range. You can sit back and pop. These guys are 28 points of wound. Base Intercessor is 20, so you're paying extra points, 8 extra points for these kind of buffs to their stats. So not too bad. All right, so how do I use my Ultramarine list? So again, understanding the role they play in your army. Again, you may have a different role. You may want to use these guys differently in your army. You may want to give them the different weapons based on that. If you want to be running up in somebody's face, you may want to take the assault bolters just for the more shots. I already have the 10-man intercessors in my squad doing the assault 3, getting the double shoot with the rapid fire stratagem. The heavy intercessors can't use that strat, just the regular ones can. So I didn't necessarily need more kind of anti-infantry shots. Those 10-man intercessors usually handle that job pretty well on their own. So I opted to kind of go for the long-range backfield score. So on my list, it's really built around that castle and to kind of be as mobile as possible with that castle. All the options are either fast or they're assault, so they can run and shoot, right? So you have the assault weapon intercessors, you have the assault weapon hellblasters, you have attack bikes moving fast with multi-meltas, Guilliman and everyone else giving +1 to run, makes them move pretty fast consistently, and then all the characters just run to kind of fit in and get their bubbles in the right auras as needed. But if I start moving up into the midfield, you kind of have that question of where or who is holding out in the back. Do I have to have a 5-man infiltrator sitting back there? Are they durable enough to sit on the backfield, without somebody babysitting them? You worry about people deep striking in or teleporting in or moving fast units back there. Can they hold out on their own without babysitting? And then do they offer any kind of offensive abilities? Usually infiltrators are pretty great for hiding in the back, blocking deep striking with their 12-inch deny, but they're not really like shooting with their bolters. And these guys kind of change that role, right? They got long-range weapons. They're multi-damage. So now they can plink away with some 2 and 3 damage hits. Not necessarily there to kill a unit. You don't get that expectation. I think you want to make sure you set your mind right. These guys aren't shooting tons of shots with these weapons. And they're not just going to sit there and pick up squad after squad. But at the same time, nobody wants to get shot with 2 and 3 damage weapons, especially if you're like Marines. You don't want to take those types of wounds just casually. And at 42 inches, that's a long range. So if you don't have, most Marines want to live in that 24-inch range. If you're getting shot from that far away, you got to go through the rest of my army to kind of get at these guys. So that's exactly where I want you. So it kind of gives you a little bit of options. I can sit back on this objective and I can plink away with you with some annoyingly damaging weapons and force you to think about these guys as a threat. But then also when you start shooting at them, you realize they just don't die that easily. And so, is that firepower better spent chasing after your troops on the objective or shooting somewhere else? Another option that I use for these guys is for durable screening in objective secured units. So sometimes you really need to push up on an objective, but you need somebody that's OPSEC that's going to hold the line. So if they try to flood the board with OPSEC, you don't have that many OPSEC units in Marines, at least not my list. And this actually has a lot, but normally I'm on an objective with 5 guys, and Guilliman and all the Victrix and everybody else, we're all fighting as a team, all huddled up. But if they sneak in one objective secured unit and they kill off the last intercessor on that unit, now all of a sudden I lost my OPSEC bubble and I'm in trouble. These guys kind of help with that, able to reinforce that with a little bit more durable unit than regular intercessors. Being toughness 5 with a -1 to hit, with the invulnerable save, with the 6-up feel no pain, transhuman, all those things like big beasties that come in you think would just like wipe the floor with a 5-man Marine unit suddenly have a little bit difficulty getting rid of those guys. I've had Magnus run in and hit these guys. I've had assault centurions come in and hit these guys when they're all buffed up and they didn't die, right? And so the difference between living with one guy and no guys is a big deal. Also, if you need to just throw them out there for a smite, sometimes we've seen a lot of rise in mortal wound spam around here lately. I can't afford to be just taking smites on hellblasters or attack bikes or Guilliman, Victrix guard. Those guys, super high toughness or great invulnerable saves. They just don't want to take those types of wounds, right? I need them to be alive to do work and fight you off. These guys are there to take those wounds and stay alive, right? So 15 wounds on a 5-man squad. The difference between someone doing 10 and 12 wounds, killing a regular intercessor squad versus 15, that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of investment. And if you have 6-up feel no pains, you might hit a couple and that unit lives. And if one guy lives that you can now heal grow another buy back with Apothecary. That's all the difference in the world. So having those really helped me in my games, in my test games, in the tournament. So we'll talk about that in a second. So recent results. So we just actually, it's one thing to talk about it, but what does that actually translate into real world performance, right? Because we want to ultimately build this take all comers list to go to a tournament and run the gamut and finish well, right? So it just so happens that we went to a tournament. We took most of the Pro Tabletop team out there, Brad and Jamie and myself, and we were like, let's go to a tournament at our local gaming store and see what we can do with our new list. So this event just happened over this past weekend, was an 18-person, 3-round RTT. A couple caveats to it. It was a full battle point scoring tournament, so it didn't matter what your record was. It was really based on what your total battle point score, which is a little bit weird in 9th edition, just the way some of those games are. You play a really tight mission. Sometimes your whole job to win that game is to deny your opponent scoring and just beat them by a little bit. So having to just be like, I don't care what the game score is, as long as I have a lot of points, it's just weird, right? So it's kind of weird going in that mindset. They also did not allow any book mission specific secondaries. You had to take the normal mission secondaries out of the book. So that was a good test, right? Because we really kind of put these guys in here. I kind of didn't know that necessarily going into the event, but that's really a good test for my heavy intercessors, because I really wanted to test out, can they get While We Stand, We Fight in the context of my list? Was that going to be a good valid choice for them? Were they going to perform in the back doing all the roles that I kind of thought they were good for? So here are the results, right? So I finished 2-0-1. That one being a draw. Hard to get a draw in 9th, at least the way we've played around here. But those guys, I ended up playing against Colin with his Custodes. So Colin Watts, one of my good friends here in Atlanta, a super great player. He actually beat me in our recent invitational. He had a slightly different version of his list. I had a slightly different version of mine. And we went head to head, and he whooped me. So I was all ready to get him in the second round, get my vengeance. We played a super tight game. We actually ended up picking the exact same secondaries. He got up a little bit ahead on engage, so I was forced to do a risky play to steal one of his banners, which ended up costing me one of my other secondary points for While We Stand. It was some intercessors, some regular ones that ran out there. He killed them, but failed to charge with one of his While We Stand units that left it out of position. I was able to kill it and tie it up. So a fantastic game at the end to get a draw. So looking out at the rest of the field, there's only 2 other players that went undefeated. So I was 2-0-1. I didn't lose. I did not get 3-0, but there was 2 other players who did get 3-0. And that was both our Pro Tabletop brothers, Brad and Jamie, both finished 3-0. So congratulations to them. They played some great games. I ended up finishing 4th overall in total battle points. I won Best Sports, so that's why I'm a little bit hoarse today, just from all the hooping and hollering, yelling, having a great time. Playing Warhammer, I love to play Warhammer, so I just try to have a good time with the new people that I see there. So I met some great new people, played some fantastic Warhammer. Jamie from the event going 3-0, he ended up having the most battle points, so he actually won first place. So congratulations to him. I'm sure we'll see some videos with him. I think we had some vlogs going on throughout the weekend as well, so we'll probably have those videos go up at some point. And then I can report back on the heavy intercessors, testing it in the heat of battle. I chose them for While We Stand every single game, and not once did they all get killed to give up While We Stand. So I got that every single game. They were fantastic. Again, I used them on everything you could think of. All the things I talked about, they did it, right? If I needed to come in and wade in and take some hits from big beaters, they did it. If I needed to sit back and plink away runes, they did it. At one point, I lost all my heavy shooting early on, and I had to force to kind of go up in charge. So they came in there and said, "We'll hold the objective. Guilliman, you go get him. We got this." And they did it great. So I'm a fan. If you haven't looked at heavy intercessors, maybe after this you will, because I think they got a place in Marine lists. If you see them across the table, you got to take some extra thought on how you can get rid of those guys. All right, well, that wraps it up. I hope you learned a little bit about heavy intercessors.
what I've done, why I put them in my list. I definitely give them a thumbs up if you just skip it to the end. Thumbs up for Heavy Intercessors. Go get some. I know you can't really buy the full kit yet, but they are good. Start thinking about how you can put them in your list. I know now that I have them in there, I don't think I'm ever taking them out. They're fantastic. So great job for the guys at the tournament. Thanks for watching. If you want more Marine coverage, look forward to, we have some new exciting things in the works. Hopefully we should have a video out here soon, a full new version of a new format battle report. So we're looking forward to that. And then we'll be back with some streaming here in the next couple of weeks. We have some new things coming. So exciting times here at Pro Tabletop. Keep out gaming. Send us some comments. Tell me what you think about Heavy Intercessors. What do you think about my new list? What do you think it'll have problems with? Yeah. Like, subscribe, do all those fun things, and we'll see you next time.